So, a new behind-the-scenes featurette for the new Superman movie just released, and I want to talk about it. There's new shots of the costume, and yes, it looks good, fight me, and clear shots of characters like Metamorpho, Hawkgirl, whoever this freak is, but the one shot that really caught my eye was this. Now, everybody's first assumption is that this is Lex's warsuit, but I have a big boy brain, and I'm way too invested in knowing every detail about stupid stuff like this, and it's ruining my relationships. This isn't Lex Luthor or his famous warsuit. No, my sweet summer child. This is the Hammer of Boravia, an original character for this movie, which you simpletons would know if you took the time to read the upscaled leak of a newspaper article spotted in the trailer for the teaser trailer from back in December. You losers, get a life! Why does this matter to me? Well, the article mentions something that we do see in the trailer, Superman potentially intervening in an international conflict to save civilians. This, I'm assuming, is the country of Jaharnpur, and they're being invaded by Boravia. To me, this is the most stirring moment in the trailer. This shit makes me tear up every time. The article from this screenshot goes on to detail what I and many had initially assumed to be events that may have taken place either off-screen or before the movie started. Superman intervenes in this conflict, leading to an independent, that's in quotes, Boravian national calling himself the Hammer of Boravia to commit retaliatory terrorism in Metropolis, for which Superman is blamed. This is that guy, judging by the photo that was attached to that article. So, why does this matter? This means we get to see these events play out in the movie itself, which to me is a huge relief. It also lets me know more about what James Gunn's take on Superman is about, and what he's trying to say about why we still need Superman today. But to explain that, I have to go back a bit. When Man of Steel was being made, producer Christopher Nolan and director Zack Snyder talked about how they wanted to tell a story about what happens when Superman enters a modern, cynical, paranoid world. How does a post-9/11 America react to an alien with godlike powers? Do they fear him, worship him, all of the above? It's an interesting question, but there's a problem. I think it's the wrong question. And to me, that's evident in the movie itself. Now, don't yell at me for this, but Superman isn't really much of a character in these movies. He's more of a force of nature that's had really vague character motivations kind of loosely hung around his neck. And let's be honest, that stuff wasn't exactly what Zack Snyder's priority was with this version of the character, so much as it was showing you what he was physically capable of. He was more interested in the super part than the man part. And that's kind of a problem. Mileage may vary, but for me, that's a problem. That movie is only interested in what Superman can do. It gestures vaguely at why, at who he is, but those elements kind of fall by the wayside by Act 3. Should we be afraid of Superman? Yes or no. Why? Because he said so. This guy isn't a character. He's a manifestation of power for power's sake. He's a god to be worshipped, an alien to be beheld. So, of course, everyone is going to fear him and be suspicious and be paranoid. He's given them no reason to feel otherwise. When he does stop Zod, it's not before Metropolis is flattened and countless people are crushed and stepped on. And not in a sexy way. But then the movie tells us he should be trusted because he should, and he told us he should be because he's the iconic character Superman. Of course we're going to trust him. I don't really like that. It doesn't really connect with me, and I just don't think that's the most interesting angle on the question of how a modern world reacts to Superman. The problem is what they're reacting to. When Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster first created Superman, they introduced him as a champion of the oppressed. Those are their words. In his first handful of issues, he was manhandling corrupt senators, beating up domestic abusers, lecturing generals, and standing up for overworked miners and confronting the mine owners about unsafe working conditions. It was absolutely still a power fantasy, but it was power in service of others. Of the poor, of the downtrodden. And it's a little easy to forget nowadays when Superman is busy fighting alien invaders or demons from another dimension, but he was absolutely a political invention from the start. That is out of the question for debate. It's right there. But that's become more and more obscured and forgotten the more commercialized he's become. As comics become more corporate values have seeped their ways into the stories. It's unavoidable. And that means more time fighting Metallo and Darkseid and less time addressing the structural inequities and systemic oppression that keeps corporations in power. What gives me hope about James Gunn's Superman and the DCU going forward is that Gunn's DC work so far has been profoundly political. He's particularly wary of American interventionism, as seen in The Suicide Squad and Creature Commandos.
Countries don't have friends.
After your decades in the military general flag, I think you'd understand that true friendship is built on petroleum deposits.
Or of jingoism, traditional masculinity and binary morality in Peacemaker. Now, I don't think he's trying to push a narrative or quote-unquote agenda with these stories, but he's doing what all honest artists should be allowed to do. Explore and uncover ideas and uncover how we feel about them, to explore facets of themselves and the world through fictional worlds and characters. That's what art is for. It's an empathy machine. It's rehearsal for life. Now, coming back to Man of Steel's central question, what happens when a cynical world is met with Superman? How and why does it reject him? In 2013, the answer didn't lead anywhere particularly interesting, and it didn't really communicate anything about the character beyond a demonstration of his raw power. He was feared and rejected because he was strong. But based on what we've seen of this year's Superman movie, I'm becoming convinced more and more with each new glimpse that the answer is he is feared and rejected because he is kind. You've probably heard someone say at some point that Superman's real power isn't his flight or strength or lasers or that time he could shoot a tiny version of himself out of his hand, but that his real superpower is his kindness, his boundless love and respect for people, his belief in the goodness of humanity, his willingness to stand up for it, even when it isn't easy, even when it's complicated. Because to the status quo of our modern 21st century world, being a true champion of the oppressed is considered very dangerous. It's dangerous to the rich, to the powerful, to the corrupt, because it brings them into the light. It holds them accountable. It questions their place on the ladder and how they got there. It questions why the ladder exists in the first place. These are the real questions about Superman in a modern world that, in my opinion, Man of Steel missed the mark on. The thing that truly makes Superman dangerous to the corrupt and powerful and the status quo in general isn't his godlike powers, it's his humanity. That's what they fear. The thing most likely to upset the status quo and have governments and corporations and billionaires declare Superman a threat to the world is that he is someone who holds no reservations about intervening to save children from being bombed. I know it's painful, but think about our world. Children, entire families are being bombed and starved and displaced and exploited, and every system built up around us is made to prevent us from doing anything about it. You're considered more of a threat today by the United States for saying it's bad to bomb kids than if you make bombs to be used on kids, sell the bombs to be used on kids, or use said bombs to bomb kids yourself. Our elected officials refuse to be held accountable for their roles in this. Even the most outspoken of them hesitate when the moment comes to stand up to speak out. Now imagine being Superman in this world. Imagine being Clark Kent, being raised to believe that human life has value, that no one deserves to live in fear and die in despair. Now imagine you've grown up, and now you're being told by the world around you that you shouldn't speak up or do anything to stop genocides and war crime and atrocities. Imagine having Superman's super hearing. And imagine hearing a child across the world beg for your help as bombs go off around them. Superman would intervene. And our government and our media would hate him for it. He'd be branded a terrorist, a criminal. He'd be targeted by the people who benefit from suffering, who stand to gain by making us think there's nothing we can do. Now, I don't think this is exactly what's going to happen in this summer's Superman movie. I think the Boravia storyline will probably be one of many plot elements that are key to exploring who Superman is and why he matters as a character, but I do think these things were on James Gunn's mind when he was writing this story. I mean, how could they not be? Particularly with a character like Superman, whose debut stories had him intervening on behalf of the oppressed. It would be dishonest to not reflect our real world, to ask questions like, what would Superman do when faced with our modern problems, and to answer those questions honestly. That is the responsibility of taking on modern mythology like this. These are the questions that superhero media has largely forgotten. I know it's ironic to be lambasting corporations when this movie only exists because of a corporation, and any success it enjoys will be in service to that corporation. And no, I'm not saying that a movie made to make money is going to save us. The same way that watching Andor on Disney Plus certainly isn't going to help topple fascism in our real world, me buying a ticket to a Warner Brothers Discovery major motion picture isn't going to stop my government from killing Palestinian children. Those things only can happen if enough of us decide to stand up for each other. That's where stories come in. They can help us imagine a world where we can stand up, where better things are possible. They reflect our world back on us. They give us space to practice grief, love, despair, triumph, and resistance. But like Superman, we have to have the courage to make those things a reality. And that begins by learning. It begins by asking questions. It begins by reaching out, seeing what needs to be done, and doing it. It begins by recognizing your own culpability. Believe in humanity, all of its flaws, all of your flaws. Believe in yourself. Recognize injustice when you see it. Be vulnerable. Be brave. Be human. Be Superman.
Superman.